All right, and we're just about ready to kick off here. Okay. Oh yeah, excuse us. My goodness, we're a little bit behind. So, um, welcome to our inaugural symposium, Employee Rights Symposium, put on by AFGE Local 1594. And yeah, so let's see. I guess we don't need our we got everything set up right here. Okay. Excuse me as we kind of adjust. So um, I will. We have an agenda. Let's see. We have some slides to share with you all. Take a look at the chat here. Okay. Nope, we should be good. I did. I've let folks in, and you'll get to see a little behind the scenes here. Screen sharing, perfect. Okay. All right, folks. So, yeah, I'm going to start with invocation here. Um, so, welcome everybody. Our symposium has begun, and I'm so thankful and so grateful to be here. Very excited about our inaugural initial symposium. Um, we, yeah, I'm just filled with so much gratitude. Right? Thank you to Jerome. Thank you to Courtney. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Susan. Just our speakers. We have some other speakers, Elisa, that's going to be speaking a little later. I'm just so thankful. And let's see. The agenda is to start with the invocation. So one of my favorite things to do, I will is lead us in a little prayer. So, Lord, I thank you for this moment. I thank you for this time. I thank you for bringing us here to just talk about something that I know is close to your heart, the rights and the freedoms of the American people that work for the government, public servants. So I'm thankful I'm thankful that you've placed me, Lord, in the position that you have placed me in, to be able to advocate for my peers and just lots of thank you, Lord. So we look forward to a fun evening. In Jesus' name, amen. So, all right. So tonight, what this is about. So here we go. Tonight, we're here about union representation, what we can do for y'all, and even some of what you can do to advocate for yourself. We're going to give you some tools, some real practical, steps that you can do, some real practical deadlines and things that you should know about and be aware of. And then hear from experts in the field that are on the forefront of fighting, doing the work, on the forefront of pushing for your rights. So there's people, that are fighting for you that you're not even aware that are fighting for you. I tell you what. And so that's what tonight's about. So I'm going to follow that rule where I'm not reading the slides, not reading the screen. So I'll leave that to y'all to look as you go through. Let's see. Okay. Yep. Yeah, just covered that here. Why we're here. And FYI, for those of you that got the link through the email, we'll be sending these slides afterwards, so you can review these things. So what to expect tonight, right? A hello for me. Then Jerome, our fearless special events coordinator, is going to come and give you some housekeeping, tell you some things. Then we have our first speaker. First, we're going to go through our speakers, have a little break, and then have a Q&A session at the end here. So, and then we'll close it on out. So, should be a nice, good time had by all. I can. We got some jokesters joining here. Okay. So yeah, again, so when the time comes for questions, we just want to remind folks, speak in generalities. Please don't share details of your case numbers, obviously things, so we have by default, and actually I want to check with the panelists too. We have by default, we're recording this. Is that all right with everyone? Okay. If it's not all right, that's okay too. But that's the plan, so we can share it with folks later. And all right. And so now our first speaker, Miss Mickman, came all the way down from the capital seat of our country, flew all the way down from DC. And yes, ma'am. Yeah. I think this might be the best. Yeah, if that's all right. We'll swap it out.
Yeah, I don't think so. Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Mickman. I am an attorney at Allen Lescht and Associates in Washington, D.C. And that is an employment law firm where I represent employees, predominantly government employees in EEO cases and adverse action appeals. And I am a former EEOC administrative judge. So I am going to talk a little bit about some of the issues that I am seeing, and I'm happy to answer questions that anyone has. Hopefully I can figure out if questions come up. Should I monitor the chat for that? No? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Can everyone hear me? I feel like this is much louder. Okay, so I am going to talk a little bit about some of the issues that I'm seeing and give just some tips about some of those issues. And again, if you have questions at the end, I'm happy to answer. So one of the issues that we are seeing a lot of right now are issues with performance and the concern about PIPs. In particular, this time of year where the end of the fiscal year is coming, and especially in positions where there is a productivity requirement, where individuals are concerned about meeting the productivity requirement by the end of the year. So I think it's really important that throughout the year, you are putting in writing whenever you're having any kind of issue. And in particular, if there is training that you need or training that you are supposed to be receiving, whether that's at the beginning of when you begin in your position, or if you are receiving a grade increase, if you're on a career ladder and you're at the next grade and there are additional duties that you are responsible for, and there is additional training that you need in order to perform those duties, you need to make sure that you're following up to get the training that you need. And if there's any reason that you're not getting the training, or if you need an accommodation to attend the training or participate, And if you're not getting it, make sure that you're putting that in writing to your supervisor or your coach. And don't be nervous to follow up about that. If you are denied any kind of training that you feel like is necessary for you to be able to perform all of your duties at the fully successful level, you can pursue an EEO complaint. You do need to initiate counseling within 45 days and if you of the denial. And if you don't, you could lose your right to pursue that complaint. So just make sure that you are tracking that. And with regard to productivity, one of the main issues that I see, aside from training being a hindrance to meeting the productivity level, is just the general need for reasonable accommodations. And so, if that is the basis that you are unable to meet your performance standards, whether it's related to productivity or something else, putting in writing that you need that accommodation in order to perform those essential functions is really important. And, you know, we're seeing across the board that the agency is offering alternate accommodations in lieu of what you may be originally requesting. And one thing that the judges at EEOC are picking up on is whether individuals are actually notifying the agency that the alternate accommodations offered are ineffective. So if you are someone who has been offered alternate accommodations and they are not helping you perform the essential functions of your job, it's very important to be very specific in writing to state that the alternatives offered are not effective and explain why, explain what it is that you need in order to be able to perform the essential functions of your position. Again, there is a time period for which you can pursue an EEO complaint. You have 45 days from the effective date of the action. So generally speaking, if you're requesting a reasonable accommodation, you should be, and you are denied, you should be going to the EEO office within 45 days if you want to pursue a complaint. You may be considering requesting reconsideration when you get a denial, and that is completely fine to do. You could initiate EEO counseling from the date of the reconsideration, but I think best practice would be to go within 45 days of that initial denial. And it's really important that you're putting things in writing clearly and as respectfully as possible so that there is a written record of what your needs are and how they're not being met, so that if it turns out that come early October, you receive a performance appraisal and it is less than satisfactory and it results in placement on a PIP, you have something in writing to demonstrate the basis for that less than satisfactory rating. And as far as the performance improvement plan goes, if you need something in order to be able to perform at that satisfactory level, again, putting that in writing and saying that that's what you need in order to successfully perform, that is generally going to be the best way forward. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Make the announcement to the folks. Folks, we're going to do a little minor technical movement here. We're gonna shift a little bit. So just stand by for one moment.
Sure.
We'll get you at the podium.
Oh, okay.
We're just gonna do everything the same. This is the podium. Try and get the slides too. Great. Just closer.
You put it up on the stage. What if we put it up on the stage that way?
Oh.
You know what I mean? Be careful about your computer. So you'll get a little bit of that.
Good for me. All right. Okay, so one of the other things that I wanted to talk a little bit about is the idea of using leave. Leave can be used as a reasonable accommodation. It should not be what is offered if there is a way to keep the employee working in a certain position. So for those of you, for example, that are requesting telework, it would not be sufficient for the agency to offer ability to use leave and a flexible schedule in lieu of telework. But leave can also be an accommodation in addition to offering other accommodations. It could be beneficial to request FMLA leave as well, separate and apart from obligations under the Rehabilitation Act. FMLA leave can provide protection when significant leave is needed, and I can't say it will prevent any memos regarding leave restrictions, but in general, many times it can be a barrier to management implementing leave restriction. Now, if you are in a situation where leave restrictions have already been implemented, you need to make sure that if you need to use leave as an accommodation, you are very clearly explaining that to your supervisor so that they're on notice of what it is that you need in terms of an accommodation under the Rehabilitation Act. And again, put that request in writing. As much as you can put in writing, the better, and as respectfully as possible. I'm sure many people listening in today may be wondering about telework and remote work. And so I do want to just say a couple things. But just because in-office work is the preference of the current administration, and the administration does have the ability to bring people into the office and require people to work from the office, except to the extent that anyone that needs a reasonable accommodation of telework should be afforded the opportunity to have that accommodation. And in general, the case law from EEOC is very clear that as long as the medical documentation supports the request, telework is a permissible accommodation. And it is even permissible where the accommodation is needed for accommodating a commute. And this is different than in the private sector. The district courts, circuit courts have varying case law, and the circuits are split as to whether employers do need to accommodate a commute. But EEOC case law is clear that as long as the medical documentation supports the need based on functional limitations, agencies do, in certain circumstances, need to accommodate commutes. I think one issue that it may sound like semantics, but it does make a difference from what I'm seeing, is making requests for telework as opposed to remote work. Remote work is generally considered having your duty station at your house, whereas telework is You have a duty station that is in office, but you are working from home. And so requesting telework as opposed to remote work seems to be a request that will get more consideration. And even styling the request as one for ad hoc telework, if you are someone whose medical impairment would need you to be working from home, maybe most of the time, but not necessarily 100% of the time, even if that need is fluctuating and inconsistent, meaning, it's not every single day that you need to work from home, but maybe 80% of the time, 90% of the time, you're going to need to work from home. So trying to make sure that your request is very clear so that there's not room for someone else to make a determination based on information that is missing. So I guess with that, I'm happy to answer some questions. If there are questions. Okay.
It's not one that came online, but it's something that someone specifically asked.
Okay.
So EEOC side and what's currently changing and currently adjusting in our system. Those people that resignation or termination and are now going through EEOC as constructive termination, what options do they have now that changes in the telework process? So our understanding is one, they can apply for a new job or try to get an RNA.
Mm-hmm.
They can potentially get a judge to change it once they get fully through EEOC. Is settlement something that can be considered to come back? What options do they have?
Okay, so that's a very big question. And I'm going to just say that. I'm going to say the question again, just so that everyone that's remote can hear. But basically the question's about how claims of constructive discharge can work, the remedies available, and whether individuals should that maybe have constructively resigned because they had their accommodation denied and were unable to come to work. What options do they have? So yes, there is the option that you go through the EEO process, assuming that you've initiated counseling and have filed a formal complaint. There is the ability to go through the process and hope that a judge adjudicates the claim favorably. I say the judge and not necessarily the EEOC judge, because the constructive discharge claim or constructive retirement, depending on whether someone has fully retired or taken disability retirement, that is a mixed complaint claim, which if it is filed early, the individual should be issued MSPB appeal rights, which would mean that when you get your report of investigation, that failure to accommodate claim would be permitted a hearing request at EEOC, but a final agency decision should be issued on the constructive discharge claim, which then would allow the employee to appeal that to the MSPB. Now, most of the time, not all the time, but in a large majority of those cases, the employee would then go to MSPB, file their appeal, and the MSPB would issue a jurisdictional order, and then after briefing the issue, most of the time, MSPB declines to adjudicate those cases and dismisses for lack of jurisdiction, which enables the employee to then have that claim heard at the EEOC. Depending on when in the process the constructive discharge claim is raised, meaning if a hearing has already been requested by the time the individual is constructively retiring or being constructively discharged. You could file a motion to amend a EEOC, and different judges could have different outcomes. There is case law to support the claim staying at EEOC at that point in time, in particular, specifically if it is a constructive discharge that results from a denied accommodation. But there will be mixed results about what happens there. Some judges may kick the claim to MSPB. But depending on where it proceeds, yes, ultimately you could ask a judge to return the employee to work. It is a long process for that to happen. I would recommend that if there are open positions on USA Jobs, apply for them. If you have a pending EEO case, attempt settlement. It is very rare that through settlement, agencies are willing to return an employee to work. It has happened, I have seen it, but I have been practicing so that I don't have to do math, since 2012. And I can count on one hand the number of times I have seen an agency return an employee who has separated from work, regardless of the circumstances, absent a judge's order. So it is very rare. However, if you are in a position where you are applying for positions and you are interviewed and selected, it's possible to settle your case where you end up going back to work. If you're able to find yourself a job, then you can coordinate other aspects of settlement that may facilitate a smoother return to work. So I think, you know, that every specific circumstance is going to be a little bit different, and the facts of each specific case are different. So I think, you know, consulting with the union or myself or Samantha is a great way to get more specific information on how you can work this for you in particular. If someone is listening and thinks the scenario I just described describes the situation that they're in, but there are options, and some of them may be a little bit smoother than others, but there is a way forward, I think. And if you're able to work with an accommodation, then even if you have left, it doesn't mean that you can't go back or you can't get back. All right. I think I saw a way to a chat. Let's see. No questions. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer? I see a comment here that I'm going to answer while we see if questions come in. But I do see that Andrew said performance improvement plan is generally one of the first steps an agency takes before removal or dismissal. That is generally true, but I will say I have seen PIPs issued that don't result in termination. And sometimes it is a matter of getting someone the training that they need in order to get to that fully successful level. Other times, if, for example, someone's not meeting a productivity requirement, and they've had a lot of absences, and management is not considering that they're not meeting the productivity requirement as a result of all the absences, bringing that fact to the attention of management could be the difference between the PIP being rescinded altogether. And saying that another way, I just mean that if once management considers that someone has been unable to meet the productivity requirement because they have been absent, then when accounting for those absences and adjusting the productivity numbers, that person may actually be performing successfully such that the PIP is not appropriate to begin with. All right, any questions? Or I will hand over to our next speaker.
Hey, I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Oh, cool. Sorry, I can't see any of the chat or anything. But so you had mentioned looking for other employment opportunities. And what I'm seeing a huge trend in is that the ROs are making them specific to employees that work at that RO. So say I wanted to go work, there was a girl earlier who said she was trying to work in Houston. Well, Houston, they're not opening them up. It's only available for local employees. And the other question I have is sometimes they limit them to the first 100 applicants and they post them at the beginning of a workday in the middle of the week when everybody's supposed to be working. And so I'm just wondering if there's any limitations to what they have to say about, oh, we'll only take the first 100 applicants when there's people on the West Coast. There's so many other situations. I had kind of looked and I had heard that the cutoff would be the day that they reach the first 100 applicants would be considered, but I'm not seeing that as the case. Do you have any information on like laws and statutes that dictate anything about that?
They are allowed to limit the close the vacancy announcement when they reach a predetermined number of applicants. So they can do that. What I would say as a recommendation, as someone who has worked in the government before, if there is somewhere that you want to work in particular, you can set up USA Jobs to alert you every time there is a vacancy posted in a particular agency or a particular office or even a job title at a particular agency. That way you hopefully are someone that is alerted really quickly. Another thing too is that if you are someone who left and you did initiate EEO counseling as a result of a failure to accommodate, you can reach out to the agency logistically, it should be, through an EEO counselor or EEO specialist to request mediation. If you've already had a mediation, you can just directly reach out to the agency attorney and say that you're interested in trying to settle your case and you identified a position for which you're qualified and try to kind of go through the back door in terms of settlement. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be added to, an application pool if you didn't timely meet the vacancy announcement. But if it is, there are times when agency attorneys, when they know that someone is trying to get back on the rolls through and have that be a term of settlement, there are times when agency attorneys will notify a particular complainant that there's an announcement that's about to go up that would meet the requirements that the applicant is looking for a particular position. And so once you have applied and if you are qualified because you've previously held the position before, that could be helpful. There was one other thing that you asked about that I wanted to comment on, and I can't recall what that first part of what you said was.
I was just kind of worried about the legalities of the first 100 applicants. I mean, it just seems a little unreasonable, but yeah, and I'm sure you don't have anything to do with like them posting. It's only applicable to folks within that regional office because there are people that are trying to move from one location to another and we can't because all the job postings are locally based. Like you're not allowed to apply. If I work at St. Pete, I can't apply for a position in Houston or Louisville or somewhere else because those positions are all locally based. So that's another big problem that we're seeing. or at least I am. So
I will say, ironically, in light of all of the denied telework requests and remote work requests, as reasonable accommodations, there have been some VA positions that have been more recently announced, as remote positions. So while while I understand looking only at positions that are local to you, for the reasons that you just talked about, I would add to your list, at least, looking at positions that say they're based out of DC, because there have been some that are listed as DC, but they specifically state that they're remote work positions.
awesome. Thank you so much.
You've got a question.
Okay. Okay. Wait, I don't know which part of the screen I'm looking at. Oh, that one. Okay, because I also saw that one. Yeah, okay, I have that. I think I have that up. The one is there. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, I was just gonna answer this one first, and then I'm happy to take your question. I see that there's a question that says, what is the overall mission on the scenario? If someone has resigned, is this then barking up the wrong tree, wasting someone else's time? I don't think it's a waste of time. But I think it just depends on the circumstances. I mean, I don't know if you're someone that resigned because you were denied an accommodation and you filed an EEO complaint about that. If you did, then I don't think it's a waste of time. If you're someone who maybe was denied an accommodation and then didn't pursue a complaint, and just left because you couldn't go to work, I think it's going to be an even more steep uphill battle, but I don't think it's a waste of time. I think all of the efforts of all of the members here have contributed to a lot of positive outcomes that we've been seeing recently. And I think that, you know, each individual on their own, handling their own situation, you know, if everyone individually decided not to pursue the issue that they were having, then we would really be in a very different circumstance today. But I think because everyone has been pursuing the issues, we are starting to see things start to trend in a more positive direction. Okay, someone had said a moment ago that they had a question, but I didn't see whose name that was. So please go ahead with your question.
Yes. Just in a short form, can you kind of explain what a disability retirement is?
Sure. So through OPM FERS, there are different retirement options. Disability retirement is one of those options. There are various requirements for that, for pursuing disability retirement. A key requirement is that you are someone who has been working for the agency for 18 months and is an employee that is under FERS. And if you are unable to perform useful and efficient service in your position because of a disability, then you can apply for disability retirement. You need supporting medical documentation, of course, and OPM will review the application and make a determination about whether to approve disability retirement. And generally, disability retirement, the first year, I believe you get 60% of your salary that you had in the government. After that, I believe it reduces down to 40%. And so if you are someone who is unable to continue to perform, then disability retirement could be something for you to consider. Now, before applying, you should be requesting an accommodation that would enable you to provide useful and efficient service. Now, requesting accommodations in today's day is a little bit, it can be a little bit challenging depending on what you're asking for. In particular, if you're asking for something like telework, we are starting to see telework accommodations approved though, whereas it was difficult circumstances for quite a while. But even if you are granted the accommodation of your choice, and it's still not enabling you to perform, you can request disability retirement and fill out the application. Essentially, you fill out an application, the agency has to fill out an application or part of the application. And as part of that, the agency is going to have to comment on whether reasonable accommodations were attempted. And so it is important to try to make it work with accommodations before pursuing something like disability retirement. I do see another question here. Do you see anything actually changing for the better at St. Pete's? And I think the answer is yes. I think everyone here, I'm seeing thumbs up. Yeah, we have started to see some positive outcomes on the RA front. And hopefully this is just the beginning of that.
I had
Any
one
other
more
questions?
question, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead.
If they approve a telework RA for the year, can they change that?
So yes, but it's a yes, but, or we could say no, but there are circumstances when it can be appropriate for an agency to review an approved accommodation. For example, the medical needs change, and that can sometimes be clear during the course of working. And so if someone's medical needs change, then yes, the agency can review what has already been approved for the accommodation and see if something would work better at that point. Another basis for reviewing an approved accommodation would be if the essential functions of the position changes. So we're talking about those essential functions, which are typically going to be connected to those critical elements in your performance standard if there are changes made to those. So sometimes that happens mid-year, but usually we're talking about, the beginning of the new fiscal year when you're signing those performance standards. If there are changes to them, then the agency could be looking at what has been approved as an accommodation to ensure that whatever's been approved is going to enable the employee to perform the essential functions, those new essential functions of the position. But by and large, we shouldn't be seeing mass reviews of approved accommodations. That is, I think, highly unusual. It's not highly unusual in the last year, but absent the last year, that it would be highly unusual.
Thank you.
Okay, I see one more question on here. Okay. All right, I see a question. Are any of the original RA remote telework agreements that were in place for many years before this being reinstated, or do we have to go through the RA process all over again? Okay. Susan's going to answer that one. Okay, well, I'm going to swap places so Susan can come answer this.
I got no problems jumping up there and playing that one. Yeah. Okay, am I on now? Okay, sounds like everyone can hear me now. Okay, so what is happening right now with RAs? It is not that you necessarily have to reapply. Every single person that had a telework reasonable accommodation had a relook based on the medical that was already in place. Now, granted, some people have turned in, trying to get things done, additional medical. DMOs are currently going through the current medical that they have on file. So everything that has been submitted since the first time you were approved, whether that was 15 years ago or a year ago, they are pulling the medical to see if they have enough medical to say that, yes, this is valid enough to send up for SES approval. The DMOs are doing that of their free will currently. We are seeing it happen with multiple DMOs right this moment. A lot of people are getting telework agreements that are coming into them without even knowing that they were sent up for approval. That being said, if your original telework agreement was based solely on the fact that you could not drive into the office and you never turned in any additional medical, there is a good chance that it will not be relooked at again unless you provide additional medical about the other limitations that are there. What is supposed to happen, based on my conversations with both the DRAC and several of the DMOs, is that at your annual review, they will call you up. It will be based on the medical that is already there. They're going to ask you if there have been any changes. They're going to ask you if anything has gotten better. They're going to find out if the accommodations were working effective at the time or not. And if not, it should, keyword, should be continued. We should not be back in the situation that we are in right this moment that we went through. Now, that being said, if you never turned in additional medical to any of the DRACs, please do not just take medical records and FMLA paperwork and send it in as if that is a limitation. It does not tell them anything. It tells them you are diagnosed. It doesn't tell them what your limitations are. It doesn't tell them what you can and cannot do. So therefore, it does no good for the DRAC to be able to look things up, put it onto the necessary paperwork, and send it down to the DMOs. And Andrew just asked, are the DMOs no longer being directed to blanket deny? That is correct. They are currently not blanket denying anything. Everyone, but they are also not blanket approving anyone either. And it is going to take a while. Remember, it took us 6 months for them to get through all of the reasonable accommodations and to rescind them. It is going to take more than 4 days for those to be approved to be approved. Yes, progress. And that's all we can ask for right now. is literally, it is progress. It is a step in the right direction. I can tell you that VSC is moving a little faster than DROC. A lot of that has to do with, luckily, the DRAC that we have in VSC has been a little bit more proactive in trying to get documentation and everything up to the DMOs. DROC is starting to follow suit just a little bit. We have had an increased number of approvals in DROC over the last probably 24 to 48 hours than what we had last week. I've put messages out on several of the chats. If you are unsure about your medical, you can always come ask me first before trying to send 15 million different things to the DRACs. Every time we send something new to the DRAC, he has to pull anything back. So if you send one document today and one document on Friday and another document on Monday, every document you send in, all the work he's done has to be called back, and then it goes back in, and then it gets called back again. So all of these people that are sending things piecemealed, it is actually causing a bigger delay for you to get all of your information to the DMO than it is if you hold on and send it all at one time. In addition to that, unless you, I'm going to say it kind of this way, unless you're dying, I mean, I hate to say it that way, but there is no such thing right now as I need an expedited DMO, a new decision now. It's not going to happen. Right now, we have about 70 people that said, I need my decision now, just kind of like we all are with claims. If everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. That's the situation that we're in right now. So trying to send your information in and say, well, I need it right this moment. Understand that the policy says they have up to 30 days to take action on it. I know that for all of us that have been waiting, it sucks. And I know it does, especially those of you that are already in the office and have had to go into the office. It's not the news that we want, but they are trying to focus on those in the office first before they have been focusing on a lot of the other ones. For those people that have alternative work locations assigned to them already, meaning that there's no place for you, you're teleworking until further notice, we're kind of on the back burner. They will get to ours, but we are not a priority because we are not in the office yet. So please don't think that you've been forgotten about, but it's not going to be something, unfortunately, that is going to happen overnight. It is changing. Things are shifting. There's probably not going to be 100% that, turn around. There are going to be people that need to provide additional medical, but at this point, they're dealing with those that they know are enough first. And then if you don't hear anything within the next couple of weeks, or if you're unsure, you can always reach out to me directly. And we're going through all of them. And I'm working hand in hand with a lot of the different management people trying to make sure that everything is in line as well and as effectively as we can get it in line before it gets sent up. Because the last thing you want is to be excited. Yes, it's going up for SES approval, for it to be sent back and saying it's not quite enough there. So they want to make sure that everything is ready to go before they send it up. Hopefully that helps. But yes, there are people that have been on stuff for 14, 15 years. Some of them have been reinstated with no problems. Okay, are they going to relook at those of us that have already? Yes, it does not matter if you have an EEO complaint. It doesn't matter if you have a grievance. It doesn't matter if you use the union or did not use the union. They will be looking at everyone's. If it's someone that we have been working on it with some point in time, whether it be grievance, EEO, you just came to us and said, hey, can you look at our medical and help me do something with it? And we've been tracking. If you are unsure, contact me, let me know, and we can go through it again to see if everything we have is enough. And that way we can then reach out to the DMO or the DRAC to try to get to the next steps. But they don't necessarily have to be right this moment. So if you're in the grievance, if you're in the EEO, if you've talked to us, you can always come to me and let me know. Obviously, most of you, I already have all of your medical. So since I have your medical, it makes it a lot easier because I already have everything that we've turned in. We are having people that are reaching out that have never come to us. It doesn't matter. I'll ask for all of your medical. We'll go through it. I can say I've had probably 10 within the last 2 days that have reached out that we haven't been working up until now that have asked for help. It doesn't matter if you're a dues paying member or a non-dues paying member. Let me know, send me a message. We'll get through everything and slowly get everyone back where they should be. It is just not going to be immediate. It's not going to be snap the finger. Here it is for everyone. It goes through an approval process. It goes through multiple hands before it gets to you. There are lots of checks and balances, both in the Reasonable Accommodation Coordinator's office, as well as within the regional office, and then further checks before you even get the email from the DMO saying that it's been granted or not. All of them are going to say there's a 1-year review. If it doesn't, because there have been a couple that I've seen that it's been missing on, if it's not there, expect it to be, assume you are going to be reviewed in a year. We know this is new policy procedure that the agency itself has done, which kind of correlates with most of the other agencies on what they do, which is an automatic annual review. And I know most of my stuff is RA related. Anyone else have questions RA related or other related? Because I've worked with a couple of other things with a lot of you. Leave issue. Andrew, I am totally leaving that for Galen because he knows everything about the leave issues, but I do know that he is going to address it. So not even an issue. Will we be expected to resubmit medical? No, you are not going to be expected to resubmit medical documentation every year. It will be based on your previous stuff. As long as it still meets the qualifications and everything, then you should be able to go through. Now, that being said, if you have new conditions, if you have new limitations and you want them to be included in your stuff, then yes, when you go in for your annual review, go ahead and send your additional medical so that they have it. It just gets added to your documentation. But no, when you do your annual review, it should not require you to turn in new documentation every single year. Okay. Yep. Okay. I'm going to let Galen come up and introduce the next person just because I only know RAs.
All right, folks. We're going to do a little switcheroo. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Was the switcheroo successful? Yes, wonderful, great. All right. Up next, we have Alan, right, from IAVA. He's going to go over his organization, and yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing his input. So, and now with the old switcheroo, I should be able to do the slides for you. Okay.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming tonight, those who are in person, those online. My name is Alan Torres. I'm an Army veteran. I served from 2014 to 2018, and I'm here on behalf of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Before I get too deep into this presentation, I want to do a little exercise with you all, right? I know that most of us are coming straight from work, and it's about that time where the Z monster starts to sneak up on you a little bit, all right? So to wake us up, to get a little bit of energy, we're going to do a simple exercise. It's called 3 deep breaths. All right. So if you want to join in, feel free. If not, you can just ignore me for a little bit. All right. So go ahead and close your eyes if you feel comfortable as we start in 3, 2, 1. We'll start to take an inhale through the nose, filling up your lungs with air. and exhale through the mouth. Same for the people online. On the second time, we'll take an inhale through the nose, really feel the air coming through the nostrils. Nice and steady, exhale through the mouth. One last time here, taking as slow and a calm, deep breath as you can in through the nose. Exhale through the mouth and relax. Thank you. All right, so I am here with IAVA. All right, a little bit about IAVA. We are an advocacy group, an organization that is for post 9/11 veterans. All right, now that does not mean that if you are not a post 9/11 veteran, that you are excluded. Okay, our memberships, our programs, the advocacy work that we do is for all veterans, all eras, and those who support our community. Some other things that we do, IAVA has some programs like the Cavalry program, which is what I'll speak about in a little bit. The Cavalry program trains veteran advocates to go out and lead within their community, as well as in Washington, D.C. We also do events like this. We educate the public on issues that are facing veterans. And also my personal favorite about IAVA is these surveys that we give to our members. So every member gets a survey every year for them to voice their opinions and the pressing issues that they have so that they're able to make their voice heard, right? So why is that important? Well, things change, right? Priorities shift, perspectives shift, and it's important, it's imperative for an organization to stay on target for the needs and the wants of their members, right? The population that they serve. So with those surveys, we find our priorities, all right? So every year we have a set amount of priorities. This year we have 5, and I'm gonna list them and then I'll talk a little bit about them, each one, so you understand a little bit better. So first we have veteran healthcare, suicide prevention, and our benefits. Number 2 is the economic stability for veterans and their families. Number 3 is protecting our Afghan allies and national security. Number 4 is equity for all women veterans. And number 5 is protecting our democracy. So as for number 1, and just to mention again, right, these priorities are what are consistently seen throughout the veterans and our members' surveys, right? So what is seen most, these pressing issues, we make our priorities. So concerns about healthcare, right? Navigating the VA system, navigating claim benefits, issues with consistency across different facilities, right? When you look at that and you look at the fact that veterans continue to face high rates of mental health challenges, right? It's important to our mission that we continue to have mental health care access and suicide prevention at the front of our mission. All right. For number 2, economic stability for veterans and their families. So IAVA views financial stability as essential, foundational to the reintegration process of veterans that are coming out of the military. They also view it as important to the long-term health of veterans. So what's that look like? That is fair access to employment opportunities, education benefits, and housing benefits that all kind of encompass or recognize military service. Number 3 is the Afghan allies. So about 75% of our member surveys stated that they believe that the government does not do enough for our Afghan allies. For those that served next to us and risked their lives to help us accomplish our mission, IAVA says that it's our duty to help them as well. Number 4, equity for all women veterans. This is all about fighting for equitable access to gender competent care, leadership opportunities, and just the recognition that these women veterans have earned and deserve. And last is protecting our democracy, right? IAVA views protecting democratic institutions as a patriotic duty. It's what we fought for overseas. We want to make sure that people are fighting for it back home. So we don't just advocate, right? We have a history of winning. IAVA has been influential in the legislation, in the passing of key legislation like the Deborah Sampson Act, like the PACT Act, like the 988 Suicide Hotline, right? And what is that attested to is coming back to our approach, right? We are an evidence-based group. We are research data-driven, right? And when you combine that with the voices of veterans who have lived these experiences and with expert analysis, we create an approach that has driven legislation and that has improved the lives and bettered the lives of millions of veterans. So for those of you who want to help, right, how can you get involved? All right, the core memberships. So our core membership is the first step to deepen engagement with IAVA. Some of the benefits of being a member, it's free. All right, say with me, it is free. All right, and it's open to anybody, right? Veterans of all eras, anybody who works at the VA, anyone who believes in our mission can become a member. And what comes with that is regular newsletters. We have policy updates, exclusive advocacy materials, and just also access to our network, right? I've made some of my best friends in the IAVA. Some of the best mentors that I have are through the program, right? So you get access to that as well. And the core membership is a direct ramp to getting involved with our programs. And an example of one of those programs that we have is the Cavalry program. So I'm part of the Cavalry program. I got selected 2 years ago for the online cohort, and last year I was blessed enough to be selected for the in-person, where I flew into DC for a week. We got to speak with members of Congress, the media, decision makers, and tell our stories, right? And what the Cavalry program is, it's a national advocacy group that trains veterans in engagement planning, in communication skills, and policy analysis to make us effective in bringing our real world experiences to the table, right? So this is one of the coolest things that IAVA does because it leverages the fact that we all have unique experiences, right? Just like everyone in this room and everyone in this chat, even if you have a similar experience to the people who you're sitting next to or to the people within the chat, each and every single one of us has a distinct and unique perspective, right? I call it the special seasoning that you have, and you never know. There's so much power in that. You never know who your story is going to touch or if it's going to be what pushes the envelope in getting a piece of legislation passed, right? So I don't know if it was in the bio or maybe you got a hint from the way I started the presentation, but I'm a yoga and meditation instructor. So when I gave you all that exercise to get us energized and focused, I was also giving myself a little bit of nervous system regulation, if you know what I mean. All right. So, and I say that because it is part of my story. All right. When I went to DC and I was talking with members of Congress, this is what I talked about. I talked about yoga and how meditation and alternative healing modalities have helped me in my journey. Right. And not even a week after I came back from DC, one of the members of Congress that my team was lucky enough to speak with introduced a bipartisan legislation that required the VA to study alternative treatments, right? And for those of you who follow, maybe you know this and maybe you don't, there has been huge advancements in this arena in the past few months. Even at the beginning of August, the VA launched a psilocybin treatment trial to see its effects on treatment-resistant depression. So I leave you all with this. If you ever feel that itch, that call, right? You get that call to use your voice to tell your story, to create impact and to bring change, you know where to find us, all right? IAVA.org. Thank you, all of you who have helped set this up for AFGE. Thank you, IAVA, for trusting me to represent the organization. And most importantly, thank all of you, the people who, serve the VA. I appreciate you serving our population. We can't do what we do without you guys. And yeah, thank you. We see you. We appreciate you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Alan. That was great. I tell you, I wasn't aware of that organization, and I'm going to look into it. I'm thinking I may join. So I really like the advocacy they're doing and all the things they stand for. So it's come to the time in our on our agenda. We're having a little break. So for those of us that are here in the auditorium, we have some snacks and refreshments we're going to enjoy. And then we'll be back. For those of you online, just stand by. I don't have any waiting room elevator music for you. So you'll have to just, I don't know, restroom break. And then, yep, we'll be back at 7:05 is our agenda. So just a little bit over, just about 15 minutes. So, all right. See you in 15.
Oh, think your daddy? No. Sorry.
All right, folks, we're winding down here. We had some good snacks. We had a bunch of wraps and sandwiches and popcorn chicken and sodas of all stripes. It was delicious. So, up next is Lisa, who I don't know that I saw her online. I don't know if there was, if Lisa, if you are there, we are ready. And if you are not, that is a-okay. We will pivot. We're going to try to not hold too tightly to our agenda. Some of the agenda portions, we had like a panel discussion at the end. Honestly, a lot of that has been answered pretty well as we're going along. So we'll kind of leave it to y'all. If you want that panel discussion or you just want more Q&A, or I can even just answer some of the Q&A towards the end when we're supposed to have that panel and hand it off to anybody that is better positioned with the answers. So.
Yes, Galen. Galen,
I think
can you
is
hear
it
me?
Kevin?
Yeah,
Kevin coming
it's
online.
Kevin. I don't know. I don't think Lisa's on, but
I'm not sure if you, Kevin, want to take
just
Lisa's portion, but if you're not anticipating it, that is
well,
a-okay, my friend.
okay, yeah. I mean, well, I really don't have really much. I didn't really know what Lisa was going to do,
I guess I
but
should
I
ask
just
first
wanted
of all,
to.
can folks hear me? Am I back? Am I unmuted appropriately?
Okay, absolutely. Well, my name is Kevin Liddell. I'm the LPO for District 5. I pretty much run all political, all pieces of legislative issues within the district, which essentially is the entire state of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. I'm here if you got any questions about any legislative issues that's coming down the pipeline. Right now, we're focused on this election cycle. The union is bipartisan, but we do heavily involve ourselves with the election cycle as far as supporting members of Congress and candidates that support us and our union issues. And our issues regarding the legislative issues that we have right now. As you know, we're fighting a plethora of privatization with the TSA. As you know, the NDAC were able to get, a stay on them trying to get rid of the VA contract. So that's a victory, and we just do a plethora of things. So again, I know Lisa, she had specific things to talk about as far as legislative issues, but I'm here as a resource. Please use me. And yes, if you have any questions, I'm here.
Kevin, so for those of you maybe that saw a while ago, we had a posting for a local political organizer, LPO. Kevin's leading up the training on that. And so, legislative issues is slow moving, but my goodness, if we get some laws passed, uh, we can solidify the union and our rights in a much more permanent way, even than the contract, for example. Even some of what's happening right now with the new executive order that came out in January of last year. Part of the reason for that executive order happening is the law itself has this gray area in it that talks about ways in which, for national security purposes, right. We won't get into the legislation there too. I'm not well positioned on it, but my point with that is that if we could change the law, we get something more solid, on the books, then we don't need to worry about other ways in which we can lose, that the agency can push back on the contract. So, and even things like, actually, Kevin, I'm curious if you know anything about, I've been seeing in the news about the new FMLA, paid FMLA. Can you speak on that at all?
That I do know that we have some lobbyists that are working on that. I don't have much issue. Really don't. I can't really speak clear to it because I know there's a lot of stuff that the lobbyists are working on, and I kind of want them to kind of have some breathing room on that. But I can get back to you with that information if need be.
Well, yeah, just curious. I know we weren't prepared. We didn't talk about this at all. I just
Right,
had
right.
seen it.
It's
I'd
good
seen it
stuff.
on the news, and I was like,
It's
you
fine.
know,
It's
uh,
fine. I told Jerome I was going to tune in, so I just tuned in. So if you need me, I'm here.
thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Well, the, yeah, and Andrew, somebody in the chat, Andrew mentioned codifying telework as beneficial to employees. Yeah, exactly. Things like, getting legislation on the books for things like telework. Absolutely. Now, is that necessarily a fast move? I mean, it can be, but a lot of it takes, persistent, consistent advocating. And those are things that we do. That's part of what the union does. That's part of what we're here for. So, we're working in the local with the management officials to, try to get as much rights and freedoms as we have, as we can, with existing legislation. But at the same time, we're pushing to change legislation to broaden the rights that we have. So, um, those are just different aspects of kind of the same advocacy, but in different arenas that we're working for you.
Right. And if I may, keep in mind, I always like to drive this home. I know you and we talk, Galen, about again, our union is bipartisan, right? We're never partisan, so I never want people to walk away with the idea that we are for a particular party or that we're just going to support a particular candidate based on a party affiliation. We definitely support candidates and back legislation that supports us as federal workers, right? You can be a Republican, you can be an independent, you can be a Democrat. It doesn't matter, right? If you support federal workers, we're going to support you. And if you support the legislation that we're trying to push, then we're definitely going to support you, right? And we've worked with both Republican and Democratic and independent legislators in the past that supported our specific issues, and I think that for our folks on the call to understand that the union is a issue-based organization. It's not a partisan-based, no organization, right? So, and I think that kind of scares a lot of people when they join the union and they have questions, if they have specific political leanings. We're extremely issue-based. That's what we base off of, right? If your candidate supports us, then we're going to support your candidate. If your candidate doesn't, then we're not going to support your candidate. It's pretty much just cut as dry as that. So,
Yeah. Andrew, we got a question. What you got, Andrew?
I think you missed my earlier question, Galen, about concerning the same question I had about the telework regarding leave, codifying something regarding our use of leave as federal employees as opposed to just being able to accrue it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's one of my main priorities. And so the, we oftentimes, when we talk about leave, we contrast how FMLA works versus annual leave and sick leave and sort of the different classes of those leave. FMLA is codified into law, our use of it. And so this is ways in which we are very agency centric. So we're not antagonistic to the agency. So for example, FMLA, the agency doesn't have to think about whether or not they approve somebody's FMLA. They don't have to worry about it. Their hands are tied by the law. That's what they have to do. Something like annual leave, they do have choices that they need to make and balancing that they need to make. But if we get that codified into law, then it makes their lives easier. They don't have to worry about it, think about it, spend any energy about whether or not a leave is approved. They just know what the law says and they got to do it. So it makes agency officials' lives easier too, the work that we do. So just some small examples about how the advocacy that we're pushing for the pro-employee advocacy can make the agency officials' lives easier too, right? We're not antagonistic. let's see, alternate work sites like family members at home when I'm, yeah. We could still work, but it'd be another family's home for a week. Yeah. I'll be honest. I honestly think that I think that's standing today. I think we can. And, I would recommend you put that request in. So here's another thing we find too, is folks will self-censor. And so they'll sort of assume that they can't do things because the agency hasn't come out and said that they can, but like, just put that request in. Put that request in, Tiffany, and if it's denied, then come to us, because I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to do that, even based on current policy, as an example. All right. Well, unfortunately, Lisa, must be tied up. So I'm going to hand it over to our next person on the agenda, which is Susan. She's already answered a whole lot of questions, but I'm just going to hand it to her for a moment. Yes, and thank you, Kevin, for jumping in on short notice.
There's no problem. Thank you for having me. No problem.
And so, yeah, just give y'all a brief moment to ask Susan any more questions you have, and then we'll go into sort of the final slides and then the panel section, which we'll just open it up to a lot of rounds of Q&A for y'all, and yeah, go from there.
Okay, so I know I came way earlier out of order, just because of the questions, and that's great. It's sometimes easier. We went through most of everything that I had planned on kind of presenting today. Obviously, everyone has seen all of the changes that are currently happening. It all just started happening last week, mostly Thursday, when it came to the approvals for telework. About 2 weeks prior to that, obviously we had the shift where they started giving alternative work locations. Alternative work locations are not necessarily an RA related thing. There are some employees at the office that are not RA related that live in the Orlando area that have also been reassigned to the Orlando office. So it is not solely based on a reasonable accommodation. So if there is anyone that lives in one of those areas that has not been reassigned, they can reach out to me as well, even if it's not RA related, and we can look to see about having them reassigned as well. It is a possibility since the return to office because of the distance that it takes to get there. So that is something else to also consider when we're looking at everything that's kind of going on. I touched on most of the other stuff. Yeah, unfortunately, Kevin, you're right. They're working on doing everything in the world about, not privatizing. And I think we're seeing it across the board in a lot of the agencies that we're seeing. The workarounds with telework, the workarounds with locations, the workarounds with remote work. We're seeing it kind of across the board, everywhere. We've already seen, since they've reinstated the telework agreements, even in the last 4 days, even in the last 2 weeks with the alternate assignments. I don't know whose other teams issue out some of the production stuff. I'm lucky my coach does every day, puts out our production and stuff from the week prior or from the day prior and the month. And I can tell you that the DMOs are already noticing an increase in production just since those alternate work locations have started coming out. So everything we've been saying all along, which is everyone's going to suffer across the board, not just those on the RAs, but even those in the office that were being pushed to do more and more work because people were having to take more time off. We're seeing how it is affecting everyone. So those things are already looking up even in the last 2 weeks that we've had. So I'm not going to talk very long. If anyone has any additional questions about RAs, please let me know. And as I said, you can always reach out to me individually because I know everyone's in a different situation or different scenario as well. Thank you. Good. You're good.
Thank you, Susan. Excellent. Yeah, I didn't mention, on the note of workload issues, too. Just this morning, uh, we're really beginning now to reinitiate conversations with management at our local. And so one of the main first issues is workload fairness. We're prioritizing VR&E has some workload issues where the workload that they're being given is just clearly outside of the law. So that's our first move. We're also talking with them about some non-rating workload issues over in the DROC. And all the different kinds of changes that they're doing. So be sure and continue to reach out to us. So can you do the next slide, please? So the next few slides are just, a lot of the reason for these slides really is more for the deck, so that when you all get the slides, they can be resources for you to be able to continue to, can you do it on the other computer too? No, on the other computer. So that you can have some resources. So. I think the down arrow was working. You're going up. Hey, this is us. All right. So a lot of these things we continue to mention, but hey, that's what this symposium's here for today. So we, what is it we're doing for you? We represent you directly. We sit with you through meetings. And not only that, but like some folks don't want us to be there in the meeting. They like the relationship they have with the coach and, they don't want us to be involved, but you still can and should reach out to us. We don't need to necessarily get directly involved, but we can offer you advice. We can tell you if what you're seeing is unique to you, or we can say, oh yeah, that's happening to dozens of employees, and here's our recommendation. I think so, one thing that helps us help you is to reach out quickly, sooner in the conversation. What we see frequently is folks, waiting for it to get really bad, and then they say, oh my gosh, I got to reach out to the union. Reach out to us ahead of time before there's any problem. Pulse checks, what's happening in the regional office. Is there something we should be aware of? So, and bargaining. So that's one of the things that Kevin was definitely mentioning on. We have a bargaining team working on the contract right now nationally, but then too, we're connecting with congressional leaders, and it's not exactly bargaining, but like we're pushing to get things legislated, to get things changed on a higher level, so that we, makes our lives easier at the local regional office too. And the enforcement note there is along the lines of, hey, if they really did something wrong and you reached out to us and we say, no, that's not okay, then there is hard power that we have. So some of this we're talking about is soft power, where we have the relationships with the coaches and relationships with our local leaders. But then if that soft power relationship doesn't go anywhere, we have grievances that we can file. We have MSPB if it's appropriate. If it's a retaliation type thing, we can go to, Office of Special Counsel. We have all sorts of tools and resources that we can go to that takes the solution off station, outside the hands of the local leaders if our relationships are failing us, to get it to hard power levels where now it's an arbitrator making a decision. We don't love that. We'd rather have our good relationships. We always try to get things done at a lower level, but we have that tool in our toolbox too. And it's support. Fun things like this, you guys have heard it probably, I think, since day one of when I became president, that social events, us drawing together, getting closer, getting to know one another. This helps in in collective action, right? As we all reach out together, right? I mean, the more people send in the same, so for example, they're reinitiating now the all-employee survey. Wonderful. So when that goes live, we're going to initiate some, standardized language that if you're supportive of the union, we're going to ask for people to put that standard language in the comment section of the all-employee survey, which, is going to, something along, we haven't finalized it, but something along the lines to say, this all-employee survey is great, but we have representatives and advocates that are embedded in the work with us. That should be the first point of contact. If they're interested in how employees' lives are, the all-employee survey is great, but guess what? There's also the union here that they can interact with. Next slide, please. I don't have a clicker, not enough things are clapper, Oh yeah, oh nice, all right, yes. So the big takeaway from this slide here is you do have, these are not just opinions or nice things, these are your rights. These are, this is what our country stands for. Is these, employee rights is such a prideful thing that we have in our country that not every country in the world has. So, but a key critical portion of it is you need to ask. Ask in that meeting. They're not going to assume that you want union representation. So just have them put a pause on it, and I'll tell you, so there's really no circumstance in which it's a bad idea to have a union person present. Because here's the thing, either you have a good-hearted coach or a good-hearted supervisor that wants the best for you, and they're just needing to maybe talk to you about a problem. If they're good-hearted and have the best interest at heart, they're not going to mind having the union there. They're not going to mind another voice, another opinion, another person if they're good-hearted. If they're bad-hearted, well, then we definitely know that you absolutely need the union there, right? So in either case, having the union there is to your benefit. Having a friendly ally in your corner that's seen this stuff before, that is neutral. And I'll tell you, a lot of times in those meetings, you can get a nice, truthful resonance from us, meaning like sometimes the employee needs to straighten up a little bit. We will, but we can tell you that. And if you hear it from us, the union, who are in your corner, then maybe you want to listen to it. Not to say that's everybody's case, but I just mean there's, it's always good to have someone else there to give you their input, their insight, their help through a scenario. So, okay. Yeah. Let me read this. So if I'm understanding your question, you're asking if you have a telework, so I have some questions. There's a lot of different ways in which you can work remotely. So I'm not sure if you're talking about like a remote position where you are just like a decision review officer or an authorizer or some sort of remote position. Is RA related? Okay.
And the answer is no, because they have to make agreements with the other agencies or the other locations in order for it to be allowed. And as of right now, no one has made any agreements with our regional office, which is why only our satellite offices are currently being used.
Okay. I don't know if you all heard that. The answer was currently no, because it requires agreements with other satellite offices that our regional office has not made with other offices. So this is something we can put on our radar. And if it's just as simple as making an agreement, well, why the heck haven't we done it? This is. Okay. And so our general counsel Samantha weighed in and said that it's not standard to do that. So it's not something that we maybe could anticipate, but. I didn't see reasonable accommodation in there, but that's what.
Different locations. That's why I think it has to do with RAs. I was told that different offices, say South Carolina, for instance, is allowing their employees to work at locations other than locations that are not previously satellite offices. For instance, some employees are working who work out of South Carolina are currently working in Georgia. Is it possible that we can be reassigned? And was definitely RA related.
Even though we think that now it's worth out, because that could be an appropriate alternate accommodation for telework if they want one in office. And there are situations where you can even be able to work at a different facility if that is super close to your home. And oftentimes the agency would prefer that to telework. So I've seen people that work for example, at a big facility that's closer to their home so that they were able the agency was able to enable input. So it's always worth asking.
So the answer we're getting is to ask. And this is sort of this is consistent advice that we give to people. Make the ask. So, if that's something that is reasonable, that you think would help you, put the ask out there. Whether or not we anticipate the agency to grant it, kind of not the point. You make the question, you make the ask, and then we just see what happens after that. So, and loop us in. Don't just make the ask in the void, and then not let the union know, because we can help you track it. We can help make sure you document it appropriately. So, yeah, did that answer your question? Excellent. And so you'll find our advice to y'all is generally pretty consistent, and it's document things as you go, make the ask, right? Stay friendly toned. You don't need to. We find this one the hardest. I speak for myself. I find this one the hardest is the arguing and really wanting to put a lot of the legalese in those emails and prove the point, but that's not always the most effective. So, but still make the ask. Just converse with that. Converse with your management official. So, and then document. Great. Yeah. And so this is an example of what I was saying about these slides are more for your future reference. There's not a lot to talk about here. There are deadline dates. Again, loop us in sooner. This is another reason why, if something happens and you're not sure if there's a deadline on it, if you come to us on day 28, it's challenging, but if you come to us on day 2, then we have a lot more wiggle room. We have a lot more ability to respond for you. So, and then of course, if you come to us on day 33, if it's a 30-day deadline, we need to just reinitiate the action. So, and so here's what I mentioned earlier about the panel discussion, which we may not need because we can just sort of do an open Q&A, and then I can, field from the folks that are here. And so, yeah, any questions, folks?
I have a question.
Oh yeah, great. Thank you, Liz.
What's being done about the workload fairness? I'm a multiple SME in a lot of areas. And for instance, today I had an ALLS claim that took me 4.5 hours. And I seem to get anything that has to do with anything of that nature. I never get easy claims ever.
So the first thing I want to mention is a lot of folks aren't aware of this, and it doesn't apply to everyone, but we talk a lot about reasonable accommodations, about physical things, but you should know that you can also ask for a reasonable accommodation about some of those tangential SME duties. So that's the first thing to know. If that's appropriate, but again, it's not appropriate for everyone. But if you have medical reasons why you might need an accommodation to not do those additionally challenging claims that not everybody does, you can ask for that. So that's an important first step. Secondly, document. Be sure that you're communicating to your coach or your supervisor about the issues that you're having. So, yeah, and make the, again, it's consistent advice. Make the ask for excluded time. Make the ask. It doesn't matter if you think that, if you know in your heart of hearts of hearts that they're going to say no. That is not the point. The point is the question. So if later down the road you end up getting into a production difficulty, one of the first questions we're going to ask is, have you been asking for excluded time? It's not the worst thing in the world if you haven't, but it is incredibly helpful if you have. So making that ask is a critical part of the conversation. So doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it, but when you've asked for it and they've denied it, now they will need to justify that later down the road, especially if other people on station are getting approved for excluded time, which we know does happen. So, but your question was what are we doing about that workload fairness? So what we're advocating for is excluded time to be used in the way that it used to be used, which is not as a leading metric, but as a following metric. So when I started in the DROC 7 years ago, how they implemented excluded time is you just put it in freely for whatever you needed, and then management would look at what was entered and they say, oh, this team is using a lot of this, or this individual is, and then they have data to, the bean counters have some beans to count. Like, oh, why is this happening over here? Is there some training we need to give them? Is there something? Or maybe there's no problem at all. But it's meant to be accurately used and then reviewed. How is it being used? How it's being used, how excluded time is today is more as a leading metric, meaning they have an 80% availability that they want to meet. And so they are limiting and excluding and not letting people use this appropriate tool in order to hit this metric of 80%. Well, there's some real problems with the 80% availability. Just out of the gate, your leave and your required training pretty much take you down to 20% gone before you do anything else. So that's one of the ways we're advocating, is to have a more, a normal use of excluded time. And then, these SME duties. So is a big one that folks a lot of times are voluntold and put into these, with these extra duties. And so we want to get back to a place where that there's a real actual incentive. Right now, it's just harder work without a benefit for the individual. And in fact, it can hurt people's careers because now your production is lessening, and things like, having working with SME duty isn't taken into account in your performance standards. So now your performance standards look lower because you're doing these harder claims. It takes you longer. But there's no counter mechanism to say, well, hey, there's a reason it's lower. So those are the ways in which we're advocating for workload fairness. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So I've I've been speaking with my coaches about this since March, and we actually lost a TBI rater, and according to the coaches, we're getting more TBIs than the other teams. So I hope that's something that, you guys can help us with. And yes,
Yes. Go ahead.
They do allow excluded time according to the playbook. So but I was told today to take 2 hours, but split it up. So
Yeah,
I
so
had,
that splitting up thing, I mean, reach out. So anecdotal stories like this can be really helpful too, as I'm explaining the problem to, the powers that be. The first step in any of this is to convince them that there even is a problem. And so what ends up happening is they do things like, yeah, breaking up your needed time into like, they sort of hide it. And they do a little hour here and a little hour there, and it masks the problem. So case numbers, reach out to us with raw details, and that can really help when getting them to believe that it's even a problem in the first place. So yeah, reach out to us.
thank you.
You betcha. And then we had a hand, Mr. Andrew.
Good evening, Galen, and thank you all for doing this. I guess I will also reiterate the workload distribution issues. Just today, as an anecdotal example, I received 5 non-rating claims assigned to my queue when I asked for work from my assistant coach.
Yep.
I don't think that every authorizer in D-Rock got 5 non-rating claims assigned to them, and so
Yeah.
there's definitely a very unequal distribution of that workload, and it is incredibly frustrating as an employee that essentially gets dumped on. So I agree with the previous speaker on that issue. But I was also told you were going to bring up the leave issue as well. You're going to speak to
Oh,
that
yeah.
specifically. So
Yeah.
those are the 2 points I'd like you to see if you can address. Thank you, Galen.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yeah. So we've just begun conversations about the non-rating workload distribution. So I can't offer too much other than to say we're beginning that conversation. Management they have the ability to assign work. That's one of their reserved rights. And so their ability to give non-rating work to people is there. They can do that. That being said, we want to make sure it's fair and distributed and that people have the training that they need in order to be able to do it. And with that mentoring time, all sorts of tools. So that's a conversation we're just starting. And so, the solutions I just mentioned are the things we're going to be advocating for, mentoring, training, and then a fair distribution. How are they doing it? So if you have any thoughts on that, again, always, we welcome them. So does that answer about the non-rating? And then I'll go into leave next.
I just hope management actually listens to your recommendations and concerns regarding that. But yes, thank you.
Yeah. And so with those ones, right now we're reinitiating some of that soft power. But that being said, we're reserving our ability to take these things to arbitration. So we haven't, crafted our hammer yet grievance on that one, the hammer grievance, so to speak. We're going to wait for the conversation first and see how it goes. And if it goes poorly, then yeah, we'll push on that hard power, which we like because it removes the ability, it gets it to an independent reviewer so that they can look at whether it's fair. And we know that it's not fair. So, it'll be, so that's our plan. So annual leave, as I've mentioned, is not, let's see, the contract provides for annual leave to be, the agency must maximize the number of people that are off on any given time. They have not been proven that they're doing that. They haven't even been responding to our requests. So we are in the initial stages of initiating we're going to walk up the grievances and sort of have them prove to us as it goes along. I do truly believe that their ears are now open. And I believe that because of the pressure that oh my gosh, can't even speak. I believe that because of the pressure we've applied to them. And it's resulted in a lot of these telework grants, right? I think that they're now starting to see that we are having reasonable demands and they're listening to us. So on the leave issue, for us in the VBA, we used to have a liberal leave policy. We are administrative paperwork folks. We are not like the VHA that have, a veteran that is sick in front of us that we need to go to them and keep them alive. So our staffing needs and our operational needs are different in the VBA than they are in the VHA and they are in other areas. So, the way that they track and measure our work, it just doesn't make sense to limit leave on like a Friday or around a holiday. The 8 hours of missed work, is 8 hours of missed work. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is. It doesn't matter if it's around a holiday. It's 8 hours. It's administrative. So, again, our argument is just a common sense one about that it is backed up by the contract that provides that management must give us a written reason for denials, where they must maximize the amount of folks that are off in a given time. I think there's a couple more that are supportive. I can't think of off the top of my head. But what is needed and what we're doing is for just folks to file the grievances, to come to us. If you get denied, really, at this point, if you get denied for any annual leave request, period, it doesn't matter if it's Christmas Eve, and you think it's reasonable. Personally, I don't think it's reasonable. My own opinion is that, if our, well, we don't need to go into my opinions, but if you get a denial, come to us with that denial. It's not some pie in the sky idea. We used to have liberal leave. The agency expressly was proud of the fact that they did not deny anybody's leave. So we can, because we were there once, we can get back there again. So that's where we're moving towards. I remember it fondly. I came to the VA from the restaurant industry, and I was sad in the restaurant industry because those busy days are around the holidays, and I never got the holidays off. And finally, I was in the government. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. So I noticed when they changed it, we're not going to forget. Anyway, but not about me. So does that answer your question about annual leave? Come to us with the grievances is what helps us most of all. Yes, yes. So that's tied together. Yeah. I haven't expressly had that a part of it, but yes, thank you for that reminder. Absolutely. That doesn't make sense either. Yeah. 100%. And even so part of the reason that hasn't come up yet is that things like that will come up when we start to lean into the nitty-gritty details of what are the operational requirements. And that's going to, I think, come down to a lot of the 80% availability rate or whatever availability rate they come up with, the number that they choose. I think that the hospital has something like a 40% availability around the holidays, and they're literally showing up to a hospital, keeping people alive. So the idea that we in the administrative VBA have 80% availability, it just doesn't make any sense. So when we start to, crunch those numbers about available and who needs to be here when, yes, then things like compressed schedules will also be on the chopping block. Because again, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, convince me that there's a reason that the work that I do on a Wednesday, that those transactions are somehow different than the work on a Friday or Thursday. If you can convince me of that, then I'll stop pushing for liberal leave. But I think we all know that's not something they can convince anybody of, because it's just not true. So is it true we've been granted administrative leave? Oh, I don't know. I haven't heard that yet. That does often happen. It is not guaranteed, but oftentimes that is something that they do. Generally, it isn't until much closer to the day. So I would be surprised if they announced it so soon, but hey, I would love it. It's not July anymore, but Christmas in August. So yeah, if they have, I haven't heard of it this year, but that is something to do sometimes. Ooh, yeah, I don't know. Is the VA funded past September? Does anyone know this about the funding? I don't know offhand. Maybe Kevin may know if he's still here. Oh, of course, that's all right. So that's a little beyond the end of the fiscal year. Okay, so I don't have verification of it, but what I'm. Excellent. So our belief is that we're funded a little bit beyond. So that's, as the time draws a little bit closer, there isn't a lot we can do, but we can prepare and plan, and it shouldn't be taking people by surprise. So this is yet another reason why the union, us drawing together, we can help one another out, right? I mean, we can, for those that are really struggling, I don't know what we can do, but we can work to try to come up with some sort of solution, us together as a group, even if it's something like a GoFundMe or a fundraiser. But we can help facilitate and organize things like that. So someone's researching the answer of how long we're funded. Let us know if you've, okay, so if you have requested a leave request for a year out and still not received a decision, yeah, that is grievable, and you should let us know as soon as you can. So timeliness issues are another thing that's grievable. And so, what we're pushing for is an MOU related to leave. We don't have some really important details about leave. We don't have it defined. So there is some fuzziness. And, right now the contract only says a reasonable amount of time. How long is reasonable? I mean, if it's been 4 or 5 months, I would argue that's not reasonable. So, but it's not defined, but we really want to work towards defining that. Yeah. I mean, reach out to us, and we can initiate. So what we're doing right now, where the stance we're in with the annual leave is we're in sort of more of a conversational stage. But let us know. Yeah, anyway, sorry. Reach out to us. That's grievable. We'll bring that up to management, and hopefully we can get an answer or an approval. And then if not, then we'll grieve it. Okay, so we just got confirmation that our funding is only through the end of the fiscal year. So as of October 1st, without a new budget, we are going to be in the same situation we've been in before. So that's another example of something that we advocate for. I think somebody even proposed legislation about, I forget the title of it, but it was something along the lines where employees aren't being used as a pawn. So those are the things we advocate for nationally, right? But then in the meantime, until something has been done to prevent that, we just can help one another out, and we'll do what we can. We'll facilitate. I don't have the solution to that, but I can at least say that we'll work on it. We'll try. We'll brainstorm. We'll try to, even if it's just pointing you to resources. We've done that in the past. Here's some food pantry things. Here's how to stop your bills. Give you resources. Okay. Is that grievance worthy if the compressed schedule? I don't know. I don't think so. If it can, is it an actual violation? So, I mean, I talk a lot about how it doesn't make common sense that you can't have your compressed day off on a Wednesday or Friday. Yeah. So yeah, I don't believe so, but we will double check on the contract. We'll have another set of eyes. I've looked at it before and I don't recall seeing anything, but Susan will look at it and we'll get you a better answer tomorrow. All right. Hey, I'm running through the questions faster than you're bringing them. And remember too, we're doing here this symposium today, but we're a pretty approachable union. So, if you forgot something or wished you could have asked something, or maybe you're just struggling with your mute button and it's not coming undone, you can always ask us later. So I think we might be winding down. And we're good on time. We're ahead. Yeah. Oh yeah, good time for karaoke. Okay. So no, I'm just kidding. Nobody wants that. Namely me. Oh, great. Yes. So the question was, since we're funded, because we're only funded through September 30th, is there something that individuals can do proactively to prepare? So the only thing you can do is sort of independently. I mean, I would recommend making sure your savings are in alignment. You can preemptively look at, so there are some standard, I think there's even legislation out there that protects government workers. But you have to know it. You have to actively tell your credit card companies about it. So it requires a little bit of work on your end. And then we can, up until that point, we can work on providing you that information. We can research it too. And so we can give you the info of like, hey, okay, it's September 25th. We only got 5 more days of funding. Reach out to your credit card companies now and let them know, hey, there's this law. My credit card's due on this day, my mortgage, So there are preemptive things you can do. You can add things to your credit report.
A lot of these, there's a lot more, a lot of the companies will, if they may report it, they look at your federal employees. And you can specifically attach it of your mortgage company, your credit card company, things like that. Majority of the people, as long as you are preemptive. So don't wait until you're already late. The minute we're out, start call and further down may not report it.
So further advice Susan gave was that preemptively letting the credit reporting agencies know can sort of prevent it, either prevent it from going on your credit report in the first place, or if you let them know ahead of time, when you pay it after you get your paychecks back, it's much easier to remove those missed marks going backwards. But it's critical, she's saying, that you let them know ahead of time. So, now's not a bad time to do it. August, so, and we, the union, what we can do to support you all is compile that information for you and some of the steps you can do, and we can send that out. That's something we were planning on doing already, but we'll just make sure that it's really robust now. So most companies worked, yep. And yep, so we got a comment that said thank you to those that traveled here for the symposium, and especially those that traveled far, so thank you. And yep, a remembrance that we did provide resources when the shutdown happened, yep, and we'll offer them again, and we'll do, we're just gonna continue to grow, continue to offer more, and the more we draw together, the more resources we can tap into. Yeah, we just keep getting stronger. So there are, oh boy, I didn't begin with what I wanted to begin with. We have so many reasons to be optimistic about the future. We've been going through this difficult time, but I'll tell you, some of the negative things we've experienced have done nothing more than show us where our weak points are and where we need to shore up and strengthen. So, on the arc of history, rights continue to expand, freedoms continue to expand, and especially even right now, like I think sort of, I see the narrative surrounding government workers changing. So, we get a bad rap, the government being ineffective and this and that. I dislike that idea. I don't understand where it comes from, because I tell you what, the people that I'm surrounded with, I mean, here in the VA, most of them are veterans, but every single one of them, veteran or not, is a public servant. Listen, we are here talking about what we're going to do if we stop getting paid for months at a time. What other industry knowingly continues their job? I mean, just last year, we went a month and a half. Not all of us, but many of us went a month and a half without getting paid. What other industry does that? And what did we do it? We did it because we believe in the mission. We believe in America. We are patriotic public servants. So I think that narrative's starting to hit. And Kevin mentioned it earlier about the nonpartisan, you could call it bipartisan, nonpartisan, whatever. I like to think of it as a narrow middle path, where the things we stand for are our country. We stand for service to, to those. For us in the VA, we have a clear, easy mission, where we serve those who served our country. But we continue to stand, we continue to undergo hardship. But I keep having this thought at the tip of my brain, and it's not coming. But regardless, I'm optimistic, because not out of naivete, but out of realism. We see things changing, and we know that I believe that they will just continue to change for the better. So, sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. I get so excited about what we're doing. Yeah, about everything. Yeah, I get excited. And yeah, what is my thought? Anyway, it's 8 o'clock. It's time to go. You've heard enough of me. And when I think of it, I'll write it down this time. So, all right, folks. Anything else from the audience? I take the silence as a no. We're getting a lot of, oh, that's Susan. So yes. All right, folks. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out. And yeah, we're going to do more of these. So can't wait to see you on the next ones. Yeah, and you're welcome. Love y'all.